Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, your home for Pittsburgh Penguins news and analysis. You can find us on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe if you like this video, or you can catch us anywhere you get your podcast from. I'm your host, Nick Belsky, joined as always by Nick Horwat, and we got a great show for you guys tonight because, well, the big question that we're going to ask to lead off the show is this summer the time for the Penguins to steal a star player from an Eastern Conference rival? We'll jump into that to start things off. But after that, one former Penguin is lighting up the Four Nations face-off. Will he get some recognition, especially if he does it in the finals on Thursday? And then we'll close out the show with a preview of those highly anticipated finals between the United States and Canada. Let's get started on the Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Let's kick things off with the Pittsburgh Penguins potentially crawling out of this quick rebuild if they go out and get a star player this summer. We've talked about this guy before. You texted me when I put him on the rundown yesterday, and you said, oh, we're going down that well again. And I said, you know what? Yes, because what I've seen at Four Nations has just brought up the comment and brought up this conversation in my mind once again. Mitch Marner is set to be an unrestricted free agent, currently negotiating to sign a contract with the Toronto Maple Leafs. So there is I'll say likely chance that he ends up getting a deal done and staying with the team that he's been with for the majority of his career. But there's this feeling, especially because of what we saw earlier this season, that they may be in a similar situation to the Colorado Avalanche and Mikko Rantanen. There have been whispers that Toronto doesn't want to pay anybody more than Austin Matthews. In fact, there's been rumors of a ceiling for what they want to pay Mitch Marner. According to Pierre LeBrun on TSN 1050's Overdrive last month, quote, "It really comes down to this. I don't think the Leafs feel they can or will pay more than $13 million, maybe 12.5. Is that good enough for Marner on an 8-year deal? I think that's the clear line of demarcation." So there's a non-zero chance in my eye that they might not get a deal done. Meanwhile, there's a team that historically doesn't mind playing players more than their star captain, and that's the Pittsburgh Penguins. So Horwat, considering what we've seen from everything leading up to this on the Toronto Maple Leafs side, and what we've seen the last week between Mitch Marner and Sidney Crosby, because obviously they're close, if Marner shakes loose, should the Penguins go all in this summer on bringing him to Pittsburgh?
Well, here's the thing. If Marner does shake loose of Toronto, there is no doubt 31 other teams will be finding his phone and just blowing it up. There's no doubt about it. The Penguins will likely be in that because, I mean, that's a guy you can build a future around, even if he is 27, going on 28, and starting the nearing. He's definitely not there yet, but nearing the back half of his career. He's played phenomenally well with Toronto through his first, I think it's nearly a decade already at this point.
It's his 9th year.
Unbelievable. Obviously, the numbers speak for themselves. The postseason performance, ironically, he's the one that disappears in the playoffs, but has the most points of anyone in Toronto's core in the postseason. It's a lot of garbage time points, I guess. And discussing Mitch Marner is a very turbulent topic. Mm-hmm. One that absolutely the Penguins should be in on. Here's the thing, and this is just you just mentioning Mitch Marner, the Maple Leafs, and this whole situation opens a Pandora's box in my head, because I go, they're just going to sign him to an 8-year deal before the trade deadline, probably. No, not before the trade deadline, but before the offseason. They're going to overpay for him, and they're going to do that before they have any proof of playoff success, because they're the Maple Leafs, and they don't need playoff success. They've proven that time and time again. The one person who wanted change in that organization, they fired. And the Penguins were the benefactor of that firing. So it would make a lot of sense because of that previous connection between Kyle Dubas and Mitch Marner. And then obviously we see the way Sidney Crosby is growing closer to Mitch Marner. If it was to happen, I would say, and with the cap going up exponentially in the next couple of seasons, any team can take him on at $13 million. So, yeah, by all means, I'd say the Penguins should be in on that, especially if they do believe next season, 25-26, they can do something and get it done.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's a reason that I feel like this is more than just speculation and hoping on our side of things. If the Penguins make Mitch Marner the second highest paid player in the NHL, it's hard for Mitch Marner to turn that down. And when I look at it, I say the Penguins might be in a position to do that. Will it be a little premature as far as their current plan? Potentially. But players like Mitch Marner don't shake loose very often. It doesn't happen very much. So if he shakes loose, give him a 7-year, $13.5 million contract. He becomes the second highest player behind Leon Draisaitl. And when I look at the Penguins, they're going to have $24 million. Not only are they going to have $24 million in cap space, but they already have 9 forwards, 5 defensemen, and 2 goaltenders signed that are currently on the active roster. That's discounting players like Rutger McGroarty, who might make a case. That's discounting a player like Owen Pickering, who might make a case to make the roster next year. So you can fill in the remaining $10 million with a lot of your young guys that you feel might be ready to take that step next year. And it just feels to me like we've seen this story before. We've seen this happen in the Metro Division before. It happened with the New York Rangers, a team that Kyle Dubas has repeatedly compared what he's trying to do to the New York Rangers. They did it with Artemi Panarin. At the time, they made him the second highest paid player, average annual value-wise, in the National Hockey League. Mitch Marner is a year younger. He has 5 more years of experience than Panarin did in that time. And he had over twice as many points. At the time that Panarin signed with the Rangers, he had 320 points in 4 seasons. Marner has 710 points in 9 seasons. So if you want to feel a little bit better about doing this with Marner than doing this with Panarin, there's your reasoning. He's a year younger than Panarin was. He has twice as many points and twice as much when it comes to experience. So is it a swing? Yes, it's the biggest swing that you could possibly take. But when I look at who's available this summer, it's Mikko Rantanen, who has the same price but no ties to Pittsburgh. If I look at 2026, is there anybody else in that class? There's 2. It's Connor McDavid, it's Jack Eichel, but it feels like neither of them are shaken loose from their current teams. So this might be the one chance the Penguins have to get that star player to come to Pittsburgh. You might have to overpay for him, but when you look at the kind of writing on the wall, Crosby needs a star if you want to compete before the end of his career. And Evgeny Malkin, who might only have 1 year left, certainly needs a star player to come in if you want to get him another chance and another kick at the can when it comes to a Stanley Cup. So I haven't given much credence to this discussion in the past, but right now, everything just lined up where I looked at it and I said, it kind of makes some sense for the Pittsburgh Penguins to go all in on Mitch Marner if he does become available on July 1st of this year. There's 5 months for Toronto to kind of do the other thing and sign him and do what they've always done, which is make it very dramatic for no reason and end up signing the player to what he wants anyway. They did it with Nylander. They didn't really do it much with Austin Matthews, but they would have been crazy to do it with Austin Matthews. If they go another direction with Marner, maybe the door's open at least a crack for the Pittsburgh Penguins.
It might be open. Like I mentioned, it's the Pandora's box always opens in my head. They're just going to sign him. They're just going to overpay for him, and they're going to do it before they realize they have, or they're going to do it before they have any sort of success in the playoffs. Unless they're playing it smart for once, and they do try and make the Marner decision after the season is over, regardless of what happens, win or lose for them. The smart thing for the Leafs is to not make that decision until the season ends. Whenever it does, however it does. But I just don't foresee them being smart about it. But if they are, or if they are smart and they lose in the first round again, and they cut them loose, then by all means, it's like I said, it's going to be a free for all. It's going to be 31 other teams throwing millions and millions and millions of dollars at him. And it'll be up to him and his agent to decide which situation is the best. Mm-hmm. And for Pittsburgh, I think there's a decent chance they could prove that. Mitch Marner, you get to play with Sidney Crosby. You get to then become the centerpiece of the team in a couple seasons. Now, I don't know how attractive that is to him. He is a centerpiece on the Leafs right now, but he's not the guy. That goes to Austin Matthews, no doubt. But with Marner, you come here, you become the centerpiece. You become the centerpiece in a much smaller media market and a much less tense media market. Don't get me wrong, there's still plenty of, members of the Pittsburgh media and Penguins fans that are pretty intense and pretty on things, but definitely not to the level that Toronto is. So you have that ease in Pittsburgh. Who knows what he would want? I'd say the Penguins can, and Kyle Dubas has done it before. He can create a good PowerPoint to sway some free agents to even take less money. He doesn't. It would be the hometown situation like John Tavares was, but he can absolutely have some sway and that familiarity with Dubas, with Crosby, with Michael Bunting. Briefly, there's some other connections there that would make him an attractive piece, and maybe, who knows, maybe the Penguins add another one in maybe Nick Robertson. Now I'm just really spitballing here, but you get the idea. The connections would be there. It's just a matter of making it in a desirable situation, because the Penguins cup window is slamming shut if it's not already closed. And there's no doubt Marner wants to win. So he'd have to find a way to think Pittsburgh is an acceptable place to win.
Yeah, and listen, if Kyle Dubas is good at one thing, it's talking. And he's talked a lot to Mitch Marner. Now, does Marner know how to cut through the BS that Dubas can sometimes spew? Yeah, probably. But at the same time, you mentioned 31 other teams are going to be in on him. I would not be surprised, but I feel like Pittsburgh is in a unique position to offer Marner almost everything that he wants, because I think they can offer him the money he wants. I think they can afford to pay him that 13.5, maybe even go a little bit higher if it comes to negotiations. I wouldn't go much higher. I certainly wouldn't put him overly on Draisaitl, who's going to make $14 million next year, but you make him the second highest payer. It's a gamble. He's not the second best player, but also that cap's going up considerably this offseason, which means that cap hit is going to be down a little bit more. You can offer him the money. You can offer him a chance, saying, if you come in, we still have Crosby, we still have Malkin, we have some of these young players that are coming up. And as far as Kyle Dubas is concerned, and everything that he says lends me to believe that he truly believes this, they still have, in their opinion, one of the best coaches in the National Hockey League. I think that will make it attractive enough to get the Pittsburgh Penguins into at least the draw, like at least into the conversation. And I think if they get into that conversation and Toronto's out of it, I think very quickly Sidney Crosby can become a swaying factor for Mitch Marner.
Yeah, definitely at least in the conversation. Definitely at least one of the front runners in the conversation, because they have the namesake of Crosby. They have the namesake of a former dynasty, if you want to call it that. They have the namesake of Kyle Dubas that we know the Toronto media will be all over in the first place. So they're going to be one of those teams that, if that does happen, they'll be one of the quick ones that everyone turns to and wonders, are the Penguins among that group? At the moment, I can't think through who else would be. I mean, Vegas, just because Vegas always, LA could use someone like him. Again, I haven't looked into anything other than,
it's a matter of who can afford to do it while still giving them a chance to win. Now, Pittsburgh is far from a contender right now, but they get a lot closer with Mitch Marner. They get a lot closer.
Absolutely. And if we're seeing anything with this Four Nations face-off, well, we're seeing a couple of things. One is that Mike Sullivan still might have his fastball. Number one.
Might.
We'll see how he handles all of these injuries he's getting dealt with all of a sudden.
Yeah.
In the final. And then number two is that clearly Sidney Crosby still has it, not playing at 100%, but playing with superstar talent and leading the team in points, if I'm not mistaken.
Leading the tournament in
points?
Yeah.
Cool. It's early. I didn't remember that part. Yeah, we're seeing that if you stick Sidney Crosby, even at his age, even at not 100%, with superstar talent like Mitch Marner, for example, he can produce. He still has it. He still has his fastball, that's for sure. It's just definitely losing some speed, but that could also be because of the current players around him. Now, don't get me wrong, he's playing with Rickard Rakell, who was also at this tournament, but not at the same level that guys like Nathan McKinnon, or he's sharing a power play with Connor McDavid, or like on the level of Mitch Marner.
Yeah, and don't forget he's playing injured.
He's playing hurt. He's playing hurt too. So we'll have to see. I think the Penguins could easily make that make that case, and they'll be a team to watch big if, because Toronto's dumb, it comes to that.
Yeah, we'll have to keep our eye on the situation in Toronto because, well, they're always at the top of headlines in the National Hockey League. So we'll keep our eye on Mitch Marner. If he shakes loose, this will become a conversation that we have probably every single day. So if you're tired of it now, you'll be real tired of it in late June, whenever we potentially get close to that deadline of July 1st. Let's talk about the Four Nations face-off here, because that has obviously dominated storylines. Most of the Penguins are still on vacation. So we're going to talk about a former Penguin, because whenever you watch the Four Nations face-off, which has been fantastic, by the way, I think so far it has been everything the NHL has wanted it to be, especially down to the fact that we are going to get US versus Canada part 2 on Thursday. It's going to do crazy ratings. It's going to be a crazy game. It's going to be a crazy atmosphere. It's going to be a lot of fun. But Jake Guentzel has really emerged again in this tournament. I don't know how many times we can say that Jake Guentzel has emerged, but once again, the lights are bright and Jake Guentzel has stepped up. He's tied for second on a dominant United States team, scoring 3 goals, 1 assist behind only Zach Werenski, who's having himself a phenomenal season with Columbus. Guentzel gets 2 goals against Canada. He's playing first-line minutes next to Austin Matthews when Matthews is healthy and in the lineup. He's playing on power play 1 for the Team United States. The question that I have for you, Horwat, is, with all this in mind, is Jake Guentzel the biggest surprise of the Four Nations tournament to this point?
You know what? I don't think, but for reasons that I'll dig into, because Jake Guentzel is having a fantastic tournament. It's not a surprise to me. It's probably not a surprise to you, because we've seen this for years. We know and we knew what he could do, what he could bring to the table. We were shouting from the rooftops for years that he should be in consideration for Team USA before anyone was even giving him any sort of credit. Whenever the NHL was supposed to make it to the 2020 Olympics, I think we were saying, yeah, by all means, he needs to be on that team. I don't remember if he was part of those predictions or those early rosters that it was all predictions, because they never really got to the point of naming the team.
Yeah.
But we would always say he needs to be in there. He needs to be in there. We never found out if he was going to be, but now he just, over those past 4 years, he proved himself worthy enough of being on that team. So none of it is shocking to me. Might be surprising to a lot of people outside of this, outside of me and you, outside of Pittsburgh and Carolina and Tampa Bay, if you will. I'd say the biggest surprise, though, at least to me, this is just me looking at things from a grander scope. Elias Pettersson going 0 points for Team Sweden after, I get he's having a down season, but he needed this tournament so badly. Mm-hmm. He needed to prove something to himself, to his team, and to 31 other teams that he can do something. Not only did the Canucks trade away JT Miller to keep you around, not only did you become further away from him in a tournament like this. I mean, yeah, you still think he's still around, but you had a chance to really prove yourself against Finland, against Canada, and you just didn't. You played 9 minutes in a meaningless game, but the fewest among Team Sweden forwards, and 0 points. Not at all what was needed from him, and that's kind of what surprised me, because I thought he might be able to use that as a way to wake himself up for the remainder of the Canucks season. And now, oh boy, Jim Rutherford is going to have another busy couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'm sure the media up in Vancouver is going to be really good at reacting to a 0-point performance from Elias Pettersson. I will say that Jake, to me, is, again, the biggest surprise, simply because when we looked at this tournament, when we previewed Team USA, we looked at Austin Matthews. I even said Austin Matthews was going to lead the tournament in scoring. We looked at Austin Matthews, we looked at Jack Hughes, we looked at Jack Eichel, and we said those are going to be the guys that are going to lead Team USA. Shoot, Adam Fox is on that team, so there's a lot of offensive potential on Team USA. Matthew Tkachuk went off, so did Brady in the opening game, but the fact is the dust settled on the round robin, and the forward that has the most points is Jake Guentzel. The forward that scored 2 goals of the 3 in the biggest game of the tournament is Jake Guentzel. While Austin Matthews has been playing well, while Jack Hughes has been a 200-foot monster and really assimilating to that Mike Sullivan style of play, Jake Guentzel is once again the trigger man for Mike Sullivan. And that being the storyline going into the final is something I didn't see coming. So I'm going to say that's the biggest surprise. I will give you a number 2, though. And it's not on Sweden, and it's not on Canada. It's on Team Finland. How about Mikael Granlund looking like an absolute stud in this tournament? OT winner versus Sweden, which was a major upset, and then nearly brought Finland all the way back with 2 goals in the final 2 minutes against Team Canada. And he probably would have scored that third one if Sidney Crosby didn't absolutely level him at center ice.
I'll still stand by that the Penguins never needed Mikael Granlund in the first place, and he is a decent enough player given the correct opportunity in the right role. I forget what line he was playing on for Finland. I mean, he was on the first line in San Jose the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Someone has to score points in San Jose. And it was him. So who knows what he'll do in Dallas? I think he's only played like 3 or so games since being traded. In this tournament, again, it's you get him in the right opportunity, you put him in your top 6, he's going to do just fine. He's going to be a good enough, decent enough player. Again, maybe he did exceed expectations a bit. Maybe he is playing a bit over his punching weight. But, he's a good player. I think when the Penguins got him, I was excited at first because of what he can do those things. He can be that kind of player. It was just the team didn't need him at the time, and they did not use him in the proper role whatsoever. So you got 1 garbage time goal in 20-something games. I forget what the exact numbers were.
Yeah.
And for what it's worth, without him, the Erik Karlsson trade doesn't become a full-figured thing. So who knows? But yeah, you're right. I do like that choice too. I wish I could think of a second one right now. It could be the illness that's randomly going around everybody's team.
Yeah, what parties are they having in the hotel rooms after each of these games?
Yeah, I mean, Makar had to miss the big game against the United States, and then like 4 Swedes essentially are sick right now, which one of them, Rickard Rakell. Teams return today. Hopefully Rakell is not among those for the Penguins.
Yeah, as far as the Mikael Granlund thing, I don't want to hear the revisionist history. I've seen it online. Not. It's awful. He scored 1 goal in 21 games. He was not good with the Penguins. You could say the same thing about David Perron. You could say, oh, well, they shouldn't have gotten rid of David Perron. No, he sucked in Pittsburgh. He was great everywhere else, especially when he went back to St. Louis 18 different times, but he was not good in Pittsburgh. So I don't want to hear once he was good in St. Louis for the 3rd time, oh, well, the Penguins should have kept him. It's the same thing with Mikael Granlund. I was disappointed when they initially acquired him because if you remember that entire trade deadline sequence, we were saying, oh, they're gearing up to go get Jacob Chychrun. They're gearing up to go get Jacob Chychrun. And then before the Penguins could open up enough cap space, Jacob Chychrun went and got traded somewhere else to Ottawa, and the Penguins were left, standing there with nothing in their hands, and they just said, you know what, 2nd round pick for Mikael Granlund, let's do that. And he was awful. He was awful with the Penguins. So I don't want to hear, revisionist history because he had 2 good years on an awful team in San Jose, and then he got traded for a crazy 1st round pick to the Dallas Stars along with Cody Ceci. So, I thought with that in mind, I started this by giving the guy props. With that in mind, I think he was the 2nd biggest surprise behind Jake Guentzel. And the last question I have on this before we get to our Pens poll and our finals preview for the 4 Nations face-off, are people ever going to give Jake Guentzel credit for just simply being a really, really, really good hockey player? Because I'm still hearing people say, well, I mean, look at the line mates. I even saw something on, I think it was Bleacher Report Open Ice that was like, look how fortunate Jake Guentzel's been to have such good line mates over his career. And it was Crosby, it was Aho, it was Kucherov. And I'm like, guys, can we please give some credit to the player that's actually putting the puck in the back of the net?
Good players play with good players.
Yeah,
that's the way it is. We have seen the Dom Simone situation where it's Dom Simone playing with Sidney Crosby. However, it's not like Dom Simone he played with Calgary. He didn't end up playing with Calgary's top players. He barely played with the Flames. It's one thing to do it with one team. It's another to do it as Jake Guentzel has done it 3 different times with elite talents in Sebastian Aho and Nikita Kucherov. You could even say he played with Malkin for a little bit and succeeded with him. You really could make that argument. At some point he'll get it. The media, me, you, members of the media across the hockey nation, they get it. They see it. They understand it. It is a lot of these fan bases that are still falling short of that, I think, because you hear it all the time. You hear the announcers say all the time how good Jake Guentzel is. He's a coach's son. He knows he's smart enough to play with those kinds of players, to play with Crosby, to play with Aho, to play with Kucherov, who are three vastly different players. They're all elite talents. They are all, they were all at their A games when Jake Guentzel was playing with them. And Jake Guentzel's been able to adapt and stay in his lane, but also adapt to who he's playing with. Yeah, everyone I think that is smart enough can see it. It's a matter of, him receiving the proper flowers, which I think he will soon enough. This team wins gold. Absolutely. No doubt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now you mentioned the season that he ended up having to play with Malkin due to Sidney Crosby's injury. That would have probably been his best season of his career.
Oh, yeah.
Far. It was 2019-20. He scored 43 points in 39 games, had 20 goals, 23 assists, and then went down with an upper body injury and missed the entire rest of the season up until after the COVID break and came back in the bubble. Like, this is a guy that has put up very impressive numbers no matter who he plays with. So you can say he's a product of Sidney Crosby, but you would just be dead wrong and ignorant to the fact that he's been good with everybody he's played with. So eventually you have to start giving him credit and saying, hey, well, he's just as good. Like, he's not just as good as Sidney Crosby. We all understand Crosby's on another level, but he's on that level of being a star player. Like, he deserves the spot he's gotten at the Four Nations, and obviously he's took it and ran with it. So shout out to Jake Guentzel, continuing to break the mold of what everybody thinks he is. Let's close out this episode by going over to our Pens poll, which is essentially a preview for the championship game. United States takes on Canada in part 2 of this rivalry series on Thursday night at 8 o'clock, probably more like 8:20 on ESPN and all their associated channels. Canada went 2-1 in the round robin, and the biggest question with them, you have to stick with Jordan Binnington, don't you? Like, you going to go to Adin Hill? You going to go to Sam Montembeault? You think they stick with Binnington in the final here?
At this point, you have to, yes. Listen, he shouldn't have been on the team in the first place. I mean, I could think of 3 Canadian goalies that are better than the 3 that they have now. This isn't what we're here to discuss, but at this point, you just stick with him. Who knows if he is the quote unquote big game player. It's been 6 years since he won a cup. Let's relax on that.
But he did it in that building.
Let's relax on that too. I don't care. I don't care. It's been 6 years. It's just, at this point, you don't change. You don't change your goalie at this point. You're not all of a sudden going to throw in somebody new. No, it's going to be Jordan Binnington, barring him getting sick. It'll be his net until he gives up 3 in the first couple of minutes, and they have no choice but to put in Adin Hill.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's not like you don't have some Stanley Cup pedigree in the backup position with Adin Hill. I think it would be crazy if they ended up going with Sam Montembeault. That would be John Cooper galaxy braiding this to the 10th degree. But you do have a guy with some caliber in Adin Hill. Now, I agree. Logan Thompson would probably be the guy you want to put in net right now, but he's not on the team for reasons that are unbeknownst to us. So I do agree with you. I think they stick with Binnington, even in his best game, which was yesterday. Boy, did it look like he was real leaky at the end there. It was a rough finish for Team Canada and for Jordan Binnington. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes. United States also finishes the round robin 2-1, but okay, they lost last night 2-1 to Sweden in a game where, let's be honest, meant absolutely nothing to them. But their biggest question is, who's playing? Because there's a lot of injuries, there's a lot of illnesses, and there's a lot of question marks for Thursday night. Matthew Tkachuk obviously held out due to precautionary reasons. Brady Tkachuk was in and out of the lineup all night last night. Charlie McAvoy was reportedly taken to the hospital in Boston, so we'll have to wait and see what that is with an upper body injury. Austin Matthews was held out. Vincent Trocheck was banged up. That's a lot of injuries, Horwat, and that's a lot of injuries to very important pieces. I mean, look no further than the Tkachuk brothers and what they did on Saturday night at the Bell Center. That's a huge question mark for Team USA going into Thursday night.
Yeah, there's belief that at least Matthews, the Tkachuks, and Trocheck will be in the lineup. It's just a matter of how healthy they are. They probably won't be at 100%. I mean, Austin Matthews hasn't looked himself this whole tournament, so who knows exactly what's going on with him. He hasn't looked like himself all season, to be fair. The Tkachuks is that part's so unfortunate considering how Brady's been throwing his body around like a wrecking ball. And Matthew is one of those heartbeat players. The fact that the video of him is crazy. Him just tapping John Tortorella and just saying, "I can't go." You're up by 1 against Canada, and you're taking yourself out of the game in the third. That's crazy.
As a hockey player. If it was a basketball player, then I'd be like, yeah. But if you watch that Amazon series, you know what he went through just to stay in those games. And if you've heard anything, if you've ever heard Matthew Tkachuk speak about Team USA, you knew he didn't want to come out of that game. So how injured is he to not be able to play in that game?
Exactly. So that one is crazy. Trocheck, who knows? Again, I think they said I think someone was saying on Twitter, hand injury. He played through it, but seemed to be in pain. We'll get updates from the Bruins on McAvoy soon, I think. And then also, let's not forget they haven't had Quinn Hughes this whole tournament.
Yeah.
So, yeah, who is playing for this team? I feel like those players will be in. They just won't be at 100%, and that could still be a big factor, especially if Canada comes in mostly healthy and ready to exact their revenge in Boston.
Yeah, I was about to say, let's not bake in an excuse here for Team USA, because Team Canada is also dealing with a handful of injuries. I mean, we've talked already about Sidney Crosby not being 100%. I think that much is abundantly clear. Not to mention the fact that they're down Alex Pietrangelo, they're down Shea Theodore, I believe, is it Noah Hannafin? No, Noah Hannafin's on Team USA. What am I thinking? There's somebody else that's down for Team Canada as well. And
Makar was sick, but he came back. Thomas Harley could play if he wanted
Makar is still probably dealing with that illness. So there's injuries on both sides. So it's not baking in an excuse. But when you look at the names, if they don't play, it makes an even bigger, impact on this game. Especially, we talked about the Tkachuks being the heartbeat of this team. Charlie McAvoy set the tone on Saturday. Charlie McAvoy is one of the biggest reasons that Jake Guentzel scored that opening goal in USA versus Canada, because he absolutely obliterated Connor McDavid against the boards. His physical play, his ability to play that rough games, the Team USA game, I guess we should call it now, that set the tone for the defense. Now, Sullivan and Brock Faber were phenomenal, but they're not going to set the physical tone like that. That's got to be Charlie McAvoy. And without him, it changes the entire fabric of what this matchup could be. So there's a lot of question marks going into this one, and I think it just makes it that much more entertaining on Thursday night, because you don't know which way this could go. This game was decided by really a razor-thin margin on Saturday, and now there's all these other variables that are getting tossed in just about a half a week later. It's going to be a very fun night on Thursday night. It's going to be a big night for the sport of hockey and a big night for the National Hockey League. So I'm excited to see how it all plays out. But now we got to do the unfortunate thing, which is try to predict how it's all going to play out. We asked yesterday on our community page on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh, who wins gold on Thursday? Is it Team USA and Mike Sullivan, or is it Team Canada and Sidney Crosby? 55% of the vote went to Team USA. 45% say Sidney Crosby walks away with gold once again. So, Horwat, I'll give you the honors. Who comes away with gold medals on Thursday?
You can't deny Team Canada most of that lineup in this situation. Mitch Marner might blank. I mean, come on, he's done. He and the Leafs have been doing that for a long time. So we're not worried about him. But Connor McDavid pulled his team from down 3-0 in the Stanley Cup final to a Game 7. Now, Game 7 went the way it did, but him in this one singular game, there hasn't been 6 games of buildup. It is one singular championship game. He's going to be a ball of fire. Sidney Crosby is one of those guys that every player turns to and goes, yeah, you're the one we want in Game 7. You are. Nathan McKinnon is a Stanley Cup champion and is at the top of his game. It has been for like 3 years now. The goaltending is still questionable. The defense is banged up. If Cale Makar is even on the ice, that's a good start. I gotta give Canada the edge, also because again, it's not a baked-in excuse. It's just the facts that USA is coming in limping a little bit, and those key guys not being at 100% could be cause for concern. And also, Mike Sullivan did say they're coming up with a contingency plan. So we'll see who they can pull in if they need to pull anyone in.
By God, that's Brian Rust's music.
Oh boy. Oh boy. I can't think of any other Americans at the moment, but yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see. It's going to be a fun game regardless. I think the real winner here is going to be the fans and the bare minimum 5.2, I think it was, million people that watch. So they'll be the real winners, and I'd say Canada gets a slight advantage in my head. I'm just rooting for very good hockey, period.
I'm rooting for Team USA. Let me be perfectly clear about that. I want to see Team USA win this, even though I wouldn't hate seeing Sidney Crosby win gold. I never hate seeing Sidney Crosby win. So I'm never going to say I'm purposely hoping that he loses, but I am hoping that Team USA wins. However, the Tkachuks and McAvoy potentially missing or not being at 100% scares the daylights out of me when it comes to predicting this game. And I can't shake the feeling that this is a repeat of Vancouver in 2010. In 2010, the United States beat Canada 5-3 in the round robin, and I, as a 14-year-old, was pumped. I was saying, United States is beating Canada. They're going to beat them again in the final. They're going to do everything they can, and they're going to bring back gold medal hockey to the United States of America. And then what happened? Sidney Crosby. Sidney Crosby happened. He had his seminal international moment where he scores the golden goal in a 3-2 win in overtime. I can't shake the feeling that this is a repeat, because you know what? In the last time Sidney Crosby lost international hockey was that 5-3 round robin loss in 2010. And that's what he did. He just rattled off 26, 27 straight international victories for Team Canada. Yeah, I have a hard time picking against that. And that's why I think if I'm going to predict the game, I'm going to predict Team Canada, and I think it's going to be a 4-3 game. I think there's going to be enough scoring in this one, but I think it's going to be a 1-goal game. I'm going to say 4-3 Team Canada, and it's one of those things where you bet against the team that you wanted to win, but at the very least, you won your bet, and I think that's where I'm sitting right now.
Do we get overtime?
I'm not predicting that, because that'll be, if I predict that and it doesn't come to pass, it's a low shot of happening. I'm going to say 4-3, and I'm just going to stick with 4-3. I'm not going to say if it's regulation, overtime, can't be in a shootout, thank the Lord. But I'm going to say it's 4-3.
It could be in a weird 10-minute 3-on-3 that the players apparently don't like.
Oh, not apparently. Nathan MacKinnon said, no, I don't want that.
Which, fascinating. I mean, you do have to consider that. You'd think that the players would adapt to, or at least the coaches would adapt to who they throw over the boards in a longer 3-on-3.
Yeah. And
we don't need to get into the weeds on this discussion, but it is interesting that immediately right away, Nathan MacKinnon of all people was, well, not 10.
He also skated full speed for at least 4 of those 6 minutes that they had in that overtime. So yeah, I'd be gassed too. It's called, there's 10 minutes. Leave a little gas in the tank there, Nate Dogg. He put the tank on empty every time he went out there. So I'm sure when he got back to the bench, he's like, please skip me for a shift or two.
Well, he knows a thing or two about those overtimes in these sort of situations too. He was the one that scored that huge goal for Team North America against Sweden.
Yep.
In that extremely fun overtime in everyone's first taste of 3-on-3.
Yeah.
So he gets it. He understands it. And it's okay. The one thing the players really don't like is something the fans probably barely noticed, and that is the shorter intermission and the 30 extra seconds on the commercial break.
Yeah, exactly. But we'll have a very good game on Thursday. We're probably going to talk about it a little bit more. We'll see what storylines emerge over the next 2 days for our next episode. But either way, United States, Canada, it's going to be a fantastic night for, like I mentioned, for hockey and for the National Hockey League. But that's going to do it for this episode of The Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this one. Remember, you can find us on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Make sure you like, share, subscribe if you like this video, or you can catch us anywhere you get your podcast from. We'll see you guys next time.